I see myself as a child of around 5 or so, and I've been driven to my knees in front of my whole chest. And my mother standing like a giant a little bit behind me to the right. And I have seen that what she has done is she has taken absolutely every doll I have, and she has stuffed each one of them, rump to rump, in the lower back corner of my hope chest. And so there they are, all these dolls lined up like soldiers and crammed in there. And when I look at myself, I'm just slumped and hopeless, just hopeless. And as I see Janny, my young self, there looking slumped, I just immediately feel down in a very deep and complete way. So I asked myself to do emanation, so, to intensify the negative and see another me jumping out of that me and facing this situation another way entirely. So, but the first step of that is to of doing emanation is to see yourself as a child feeling the bad feeling that you are currently dealing with. So that's how I got to this early image of myself. And so I look at her, I concentrate on her, and I ask, I get in touch with that downness. It takes no effort, it's just sunk feeling. And I ask myself to see another me jumping out of that me and facing this situation another way entirely. And I see Janny jump up and she runs towards Lena. Lena was the loving, stately, tall Swedish elderly lady who was my companion in those early years. And she sweeps me up and we just have this cherishing festival. And Janny is instantly happy and that they're just smiling into it. Just they're into wreaths of smiling. And I, as imager, seeing this, begin to kind of breathe better. You know, there's some life in my breathing, and I begin to sense smiling. And then, in a little while later, I do another emanation, and I see Janny running just straight at me, the imager, and she raises her hands over and she is clapping, yippee! And as I see that, I think, aha, I am finally out of the house of scorn.
Mm.
Because I have long seen that I grew up um, suffering from this, what I call this alliance of scorn that I felt between my mother and my older half sister. She was 6 years older than her. And they both were heavy into critical thinking and glaring and finding out what was wrong with you and all that. So this, when I see yippee, I sort of feel this is the ultimate triumph of all my imaging practice for all these years. I got out of trouble, you know, and when I thought, I started sort of asking my imagination, what do I do if I feel bad again? And I'm told just see her. She's it. The exclamation point. She is it. That's the image
Mm.
to to resort to whenever I need to be elevated. So for a couple of days, I just keep seeing Yippee Jenny, and it, even in this terrible weather and all, you know, the force of that comes right through the cheer and the uh, robustness of it. So I kind of began to wonder how long I was going to be seeing Yippee Jenny, and I look inside one day and I see Jenny scurrying up a pole and then smiling down at me, the image of, and I feel like I've seen her scurrying up a pole the fireman would have slid down. And then I was sort of slow because it took me a day or two to realize the joke was on me. that um, I think that over the time that you've known me, I've mentioned several times that image of the seeing the Indian youth in profile, and that he was standing facing a pole, which I felt was like the axis mundi, the center of the universe. And I realized that what this image is doing for me is telling me I have climbed that pole that is the center of balance that I never had a hold of. And it's showing me that, you know, that there's been a succession of images that have been trying to build that sense of centering in me. And, Octor told me during my first session that what I needed was centering. And I knew that I didn't know what he was saying, but it sounded right. And sure enough, you know, I think I've told you this image before. Uh, I don't know how many years ago it was, but one day I got the bright idea that I was going to ask Shiva, the Lord of Dance, to jump on a seesaw, jump on the fulcrum of a seesaw. And in no time he did that. And he stood there. Shiva is the Lord of Dance. The Hindus see him as that. And he just jumped on the fulcrum of the seesaw, all square shouldered, his 2 feet very solidly planted on either side of the fulcrum. And showing this very forthright vision straight ahead. And then after he was sure I got that and got the feel for that, he started tipping the seesaw and showing that he could stay perpendicular to it while it was seesawing. So that was his joke. But I just see this, as further fulfillment of that straightening up and straightening out lesson that Shiva gave me a while back. And it does seem like Yippee Janny and her successor do seem to be providing the perfect antidote to the wibbly wobbly me. My mother used to call herself a flopdoodle. I guess that I mirrored her flopdoodleness. Uh, but so this is, another very sincere effort of my images to release me from the instability of that. So that's my story.
That's
I
great,
think
Jenna.
so. I'm one reason I'm happy to share it now and thankful to you for allowing that to happen this way is because I keep wanting people to understand the ultimate perspective that I have gained after doing this for 43 years, that it is always allowing us to progress towards an ever deeper and clearer perspective on our own inner strength. I mean, that's the essential nature of the practice. And it's not just me that this is not just private story for me. It's just an illustration of the essential dynamics that Proctor's methodology puts in our hands, so to speak. But it's hard to make it believable to people until they begin to have these triumphant experiences of their own. But surely the good spirits I have to convey are because this self-healing bipolarity that comes into play when we do emanation is essentially how these images work and keep working. And when we keep working with them, then they just progressively get us closer and closer to triumphs.
Mhm.
So that's it. So I'm very happy to know what you think now, what you see, what you would like to do with this now. And if you feel like doing a reciprocal vision and seeing yourself in my shoes, and that would be great if if you feel so moved to do that.
Well, I can start with seeing myself in Jenny's shoes, seeing my young self in Jenny's shoes.
Hmm?
I see first I see Jenny cowering before her mother, who looks so tall and towering over her, and seeing her look so filled with rage. Yeah, when I see that, I feel some tightening in my chest and almost some bit of fluttering. Yeah. See Jenny looking very alone and frightened. Yeah, then I see my young self alone in his bedroom, maybe 4 years old, in the dark, and I see him laying there in anguish and fear with a very high fever. And when I see that, yeah, I get this, yeah, just this sense of restlessness, but not being able to escape the discomfort. Feeling so bad. I feel some mix of fear, but also compassion. And then if I feel that, I see young Jerry uh, laying there in the dark, and then I see my mother showing up at the door, opening the door, and the light entering the room. and just feel sense of optimism. Just good to know that young Jerry's not alone.
Where do you feel the optimism?
I just feel it as a more breath coming in, just my chest loosening up and breath. It's almost like the breath is coming up from my belly into my chest, radiating out into my arms. Feels like a sense of relief. Then I see my mother uh, sitting on the edge of the bed next to 4-year-old Jerry, and just caring for him. See, she has a wet washcloth she puts on his forehead. Feel a sense of calm coming in. Feel that fear dissipating.
Mhm.
Still feel that more easeful breath, that cooling effect of the washcloth. And then I see my 4-year-old self just lying there and accepting his mother's comforting and just being with the discomfort of that fever. Still can kind of hear that ringing in the ears, feel a bit of a headache, but it doesn't have the grip that it had when he was lying there alone. There's this sense of knowing that he's not alone, which is very comforting. Just notice more of my body now. Notice my legs, some liveliness down into my feet, up the back of my neck. And that does have a centered quality to it. It's all the discomfort hasn't gone away, but there's just something very uh, reassuring and trusting, trusting that there's no need to go into panic and overwhelm. It's okay to just be.
Can you say more about your body responses at this moment?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it's much different than the last time, but feels more contained. I wouldn't. At first, the word that came to me was under control, but it's not about control. It's somewhere in between acceptance and control. Feels contained, and there's just with along with that breath, there's a sense of being able to be centered, being able to be with that breath, even even have some awareness and some intention, some influence over that breath. It's just with the inhale, my awareness can be right there with it,
Mm-hmm.
synced up with it,
Mm-hmm.
and exhale, which is very different than that feeling of just despair and almost distress that the image started out with. Uh, And that feels like the important piece here.
Yeah.
He's not I don't see him jumping up and down, but I just see him inhabiting his self in a different way. Just filling out his self and feeling more awareness and also more agency. Feel my chest opening up a bit. Feel the muscles in my legs.
I would just like to ask you to see that just being there again.
Okay.
I'll tell you why later.
Yeah, I just see a relaxed, calm presence in my young self,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel it in myself now.
Mm-hmm.
The big difference is not feeling alone and just it's almost just being able to trust that sense of connection. Even with the bed, it's that connection with the breath, the connection with the bed, connection with a sense of trust, confidence, belonging in a way. Not belonging with a group of people necessarily, but just belonging with so there's no need to do anything right in that moment. It's just a moment to settle into that sense of trust and belonging and connection. Yeah, and it's interesting how it grows out of how that sense can grow out of a moment of anguish, but it has a lasting effect to be able to experience that. The anguish passes, but that centered awareness is still right there.
Well, I'm really particularly happy to hear this. I think I told you before um, about seeing a man standing in the moonlight and taking a moon bath and realizing that I had never known just being there like that. And then looking around in my mind through my family and seeing that I had never seen anyone in my family just being there like that. And the way you describe it and the sense you have out of it is, you describe it so beautifully, and it is so central and of central importance to us. And I don't know, who do you know these days who knows about just being there? We lost it, but we can gain it. It's waiting for us to discover it within ourselves. It's there. It's not foreign. You found it in yourself.
Mm.
Hmm?
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't feeling that way before we did the imaging together today. I've certainly felt it before, but before we did the imaging, I was just having this afternoon energy dip and was feeling like, oh, I really want to be here. I want to show up for Janet. I want to be on this call. We've got important work to do here. So there was this element of trying to just push through, even though I was feeling low energy. So that's very timely, very welcome to be able to, through that image, make contact with that quality. Just shift my relationship with something that feels challenging so that it's still there, but it's not so troubling.
So sometimes it's very hard to just push ourselves to know that if we follow the right steps of concentration, the self-healing bipolarity will come into play and do something perfectly surprising.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that was happening once I saw that image of 4-year-old Jerry with fever,
Mhm.
part of this voice came into my head like, oh, you've done that image before. Better not to just replay that. But once I stuck with it, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that it was something that had come up before. I don't know if you remember it, but that image was there before, but it went to a different place this time.
Okay, so you see, eidetic images are never on replay. That's memory business.
Mm-hmm.
Eidetic images are always on what's next. They're always forward looking. They're always moving on. That's why they're worth getting to know. So they get us out of our traps. And the more you get to know them, the more you trust them for doing that. But it's a it just takes practice because it's so contrary to what we believe.